That's my secret, Cat. I'm always angry.
Alright. I ran out of patience. On the roost!
Hey everyone, Captain, big fan of Spider-Man.
Avengers! Assemble. Hello, Peter.
Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. We're going to be talking Secret Invasion's finale, episode 6. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, on this Secret Invasion ride has been Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
Going good. We got a lot to talk about with this. Heads up for people that don't know, we don't really discuss what like our thoughts on it before we record, so I'm very excited and very curious to see how it's going to go. But
yeah, we tend to ramble about other random stuff before we start the episode.
Yeah. We talk, football, other movies, TV shows, before we get started. But so we're talking episode 6, Home, directed by Elise Salim, written by Kyle Bradstreet and Brian Tucker, and it aired July 26th on Disney+. The synopsis was more than just the 3 words Casey came up with last week. It is, all hope for humanity rests on Fury's shoulders. So let's go ahead and give me your first thoughts here, Casey, on the finale of Secret Invasion.
It was okay. It wasn't bad by any stretch. I think maybe underwhelming might be a good word for me to use. Short too, 37 minutes again. It was a lot shorter than I anticipated. I don't know. I think they could have done more or better, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I actually liked it. The reason I was like, I actually liked it, and then I went online and oh boy, it is apparently the lowest rated Disney Plus finale with 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. People are like hardcore hating on the finale. Like you said, it wasn't like, it didn't blow me away, right? It didn't blow me away.
It could have done so much more for what it was.
Yeah, it could have. I think that for probably the whole show too. I ended up really enjoying the show, but I do think I can see where some people's complaints are with, like, maybe there wasn't enough paranoia with the Skrulls, or maybe they didn't do as much spy thriller stuff as we thought they were going to do in a show with Nick Fury. But overall, I actually liked it. I've seen a lot of complaints about, I don't know, like the CGI and the Super Skrull fight. And to be honest, when we're introducing a show that has Super Skrulls in it, I would think at some point that they're gonna fight. So for me, that wasn't like a deal breaker or anything. I actually liked the fight. I thought that seeing them all use their powers and stuff was really cool. But yeah, I guess I am in the minority of that then. But I think the hardest part I had with is something I kind of want to jump into right now is, how long has Rhodey been a Skrull? And there's 2 common thoughts with that, right? Because I've even seen the director and writer come out and say, it was kind of intended for this, but everything in the story tells me it wasn't. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this real quick before we dive into everything else, I guess. But some think it was since Civil War, and there's a reason why people think this is because of the hospital gown. This show takes place in 2026. That means Rhodey would have been a Skrull for 10 years, okay? Which is not good if that is the case, in my opinion. Then if we look at other films and this show, it leads me to believe it's actually post Endgame. Now, the reason I still think it's post Endgame is the hospital gown could have been for any post Endgame related injuries. They were in a battle. Rhodey in Endgame does have to do canopy, which is where it's his code word to let him out of the suit, and he crawls to check on Rocket. So either a Skrull was very committed to the bit here and was like, I have to act like I'm injured even in this intense battle for the stake of the universe, or it was actually Rhodey. Now, Gravik's plan didn't even start formulating till after Endgame, so that is a clue for me. The harvest, the thing they were trying to collect, wasn't even collected until after Endgame because of the Battle of Earth. So I think maybe they thought they were going to try to do post-Civil War. If that was the case, I do think they didn't state it clearly enough in here, and with the fan reaction that's happened, I believe they will reverse course if that was their original intention. Because to me, it doesn't make sense with the plot of the show if it was, unless if it's like a Skrull was just going to randomly take over Rhodey, and then when Gravik sets his plan in motion, he's like, oh great, I already have this Skrull that's Rhodey. It just doesn't make sense in that case for me. Now, I think it was the director that said it was supposed to hint at post-Civil War, but the writer, or no, I think the director may have said maybe post-Endgame, and the writer said like post-Civil War. Like they're not even on the same page on that regard, and that's what frustrates me too in that sense. But I think the hospital gown is in case if they want to make it post-Civil War, and they were trying to see the fan reaction, and then the fan reaction's been very negative to that thought, and I would think that they will reverse course in that case. But I don't know. When do you think it was?
For me, I think because of not necessarily the hospital gown, but because of the fact that he still really couldn't walk, I was taking it as post-Civil War.
Well, he can't walk anyway. Like even in Endgame and stuff, it's his he has to have like braces. So and this is something too. The director said Marvel had two things that they needed to happen in this show. So I'm really curious. Two things. One thing, Fury has to go back up to space.
Yeah.
The second thing
was
Rhodey needs to not be able to walk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's just something they're going to get into with Armor Wars or not, but
the biggest thing, and the biggest thing I've seen online is, regardless of when it happens, most people are thinking it's post-Civil War, which means that the biggest thing to take from this is he doesn't know about Tony yet. He doesn't know Tony's made the sacrifice and Tony's not alive. Everyone else who is close to Tony has had their time to grieve, has had their time to process what's going on with, with what he did and where the world is now. He hasn't. So like at some point he's coming out of this. He's got to take into effect he's basically been in a coma for like a decade or 6 years or whatever amount of time they determine it is, right? He's been in a coma for that. Then he's got to find out everything that happened. So if it is post-Civil War, wait a minute. Okay, so there was this mad titan named Thanos, which we'll get back to Thanos in a minute.
Yeah.
There's this mad titan named Thanos who came and took over obliterated half the world. And then they went on this whole adventure, and there was time traveling, and they went back, and what the hell are Infinity Stones? And what do you mean Tony's dead? What do you mean Tony Stark's not alive anymore? What do you mean Tony Stark sacrificed himself to save the world? Like, that's a lot to process, especially for someone who was as close to Tony as he was. Outside of Pepper, he was probably, outside of Pepper and Happy, he was probably the closest one to Tony. And like I said, they've had time to grieve. They've had time to process this and deal with their feelings and their emotions and what, and go on from there. He's had none of it. Was he snapped away, or was
Rhodey was not.
He was not snapped away. Okay. So I mean, it's I think it was post Civil War, but it could go either way, and that's.
I think that's exactly how they want it. I think they don't want to commit right now, and I think they wrote it in a way. Let's talk about the dialogue when he wakes up, right? The people that are there for him are like, it was Martin Freeman's character, right? Everett Ross is like, you've been sleeping for a long time. That can be anything, right? Like, if it's a decade, that's a long time.
Like,
if it's, let's say it's post Endgame, which is, if you add in the 5 years from 2018's Infinity War, it'd be 2023. And then that's when the MCU kind of gets off track with relation to our world. But that would be 3 years still if this series takes place in 2026. That's still a long time to be a Skrull and be in a coma. So I think they didn't really want to commit to it. I think they're waiting. If Armor Wars, like, let's say they do go the route you're saying, where he has no idea about Tony and stuff. I don't really want Armor Wars to be a 2.5-hour movie where he's mourning Tony Stark after we just went through that with Far From Home being a huge, like, we got to move on at some point from the Tony Stark of it all. And like, the whole series of Armor Wars was supposed to be about like the, Iron Man tech, Stark tech getting into the wrong hands. That's still fine for me, but at some point we have to move on from mourning Tony Stark all the time and start like moving on to different things. And I don't want them to rehash that. Two, for the people that are post Civil War, there is an interesting exchange in Endgame where Captain Marvel reveals herself and saves Tony, and Rhodey kind of says, well, where have you been this whole time? And he's very pissed off. So some people are reading that as Skrull Rhodey saying that because he's a Skrull and because they know Captain Marvel and been furious about where she's at. So there's ways it can go both.
Yeah, the Skrulls dealt with Captain Marvel from 20 years before, so they would have knowledge about her. They would know about her. Yeah. I'm just surprised that I get when they came out and said there were two things they had to do. I get one of them being that Nick Fury had to go back into space because that has to lead into the Marvels, right? Like, I mean, you could leave it ambiguous where it stays on Earth and then maybe just at some point, he's got to go back up there. But I get, okay,
right.
Yeah, we like, hey, let's just make this pretty simple. Like, he's got to go back up into save her into space. Okay, cool. I'm kind of surprised with the whole Rhodes can't walk anymore thing. Like, that just...
I'm thinking it's going to have to play into Armor Wars where he's having... Maybe he decides not to use his braces as much or something, or they want it to make sure that Rhodey still showed, like, that he still needs support. He hasn't fully healed from it, maybe, is what they're still trying to get at. But I do think it's interesting that was like one of the two stipulations they put on them when they're writing and directing this. But yeah, if they end up going with post Civil War, I will be upset. I will want that to be retconned or something, because I think it just makes a little bit more of a mess. That you're writing yourself into stuff you don't have to. You're writing problems for yourself you don't have to write. At this point, the Infinity Saga was so beloved, just leave it alone. Like, let's move forward and build out the other saga without affecting more of the past of that one. We don't really need to... I don't really want to go back and watch Infinity War and Endgame and be like, that's actually not Rhodey the whole time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just...
Yeah.
Let's let's leave that alone. I understand people also say, well, that's the whole point of Secret Invasion is to make you upset when you find out who's a Skrull for how long. And that's why I didn't like the comic. So for me, I'm glad they restricted it to Rhodey in this sense. It's not like we found out somebody like Tony Stark was a Skrull. You know, like it's restricted enough to Rhodey, who's more of a side character that I can ignore it if I wanted to. It wasn't like this huge reveal, thank God. And that's why when I see people say they wish that this was an Avengers movie, I am so glad they're not the ones in charge because, again, I just don't like the idea of like you do Avengers Secret Invasion and you find out the Captain America that went back was actually and is dancing with Peggy is actually a Skrull. And you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, so I don't want them to touch that kind of stuff. So I'm much more pleased with it just being Rhodey, but I do hope that they see this reaction and say, oops, if that was the plan, maybe we don't do that plan anymore. And that's why I think they did leave it kind of ambiguous. I think they weren't committed to what they wanted to do. And that can be good or bad. It's good in this case for me, but you can also say artistically it's not great because you want to be able to commit to stuff without worrying about fan reaction as well. So I don't know. Overall, I did enjoy the show, and we'll talk more of it here. Casey, a scene that I really liked, and I knew what was happening as it was going on, was Fury confronting Gravik and really playing it up how affected he was by the radiation. And I just kind of had the thought when he spilled his medication, I was like, this is Gaia. This is Gaia here as Fury. And I think part of that too was just we didn't, we cut back to the president, right? And we have like Olivia Colman's character going in there, and then she's, they're like, Fury's on his way. And I'm like, so either Fury's going to show up at both places, and it's either going to be one of them as a Skrull, which is going to be Gaia. But my thought was, obviously, the one confronting Gravik is actually going to be Gaia. And I like that move. I really enjoyed that because she knew what the plan was, and so did Fury, right? So they give him the harvest, so that way it also powers Gaia up to be a super Skrull and give her more of the powers, because she already had some, but give her more of the powers as well, and then it leads to this Skrull fight. So did you have any inclination that it wasn't Fury as it was building to that reveal?
Not during the whole thing. I legitimately thought it was Fury. I thought it was just Olivia Colman being a badass who was taking out all the Skrull Secret Service agents. She's so awesome. That character's so great. But I legitimately thought it was Nick Fury. And I have a small issue with that where, okay, he gives him the harvest. They came up with a plan. Okay, they're going to send Gaia in there. And Gaia probably needs to have the fight with Gravik because they killed her father, they killed her mother, they killed her father, right? We get it. Like she needs that vengeance, not really Nick Fury. I get that. But she had some super Skrull powers from earlier in the series. But the plan they came up with is relying and hoping that somehow when Gravik infuses himself with all these other powers, that she can be there at the same time and find a way to get herself infused with it. And who's to say that's going to happen? Who's to say it's going to work? Who's to say when they infuse everything and if both of them are in there at the same time, they won't fuse into one super duper Skrull? Like, I don't know. I get it. It has to happen for story's sake. But it's one of those, like, they're relying on an awful lot to go right for them in this place. 2, Skrulls can't recognize each other?
You know, that is something that's interesting I haven't thought of, and I'm glad you bring that up. How? Yeah, I guess they'd have to show their true form to know each other. You think they'd be able to smell like, but I guess then they wouldn't be as effective blending in. Yeah,
But you would think there would be some way for
like how
true.
a dog can smell stuff that we can't.
I don't know, a psychic thing, a feeling. I can't explain it, but you would think that he would know he's face to face with another scroll, right? And maybe I'm
That's
just way off
interesting.
on that one. Maybe that's just me reading too much into it and just not just allowing it to happen. But it's one of those like, wait a minute, he couldn't tell. Like,
I think in the show and stuff, there's no way that they've ever talked about that type of stuff. But I think when you're applying it to real life, if there were scrolls, I think there would be some way another scroll would be able to tell another scroll, right? Because at some point they would have to like mate to continue life, so there'd have to be some sort of way that they would be able to distinguish each other to know. I guess I
yeah.
don't know. That's interesting.
So
I didn't think of that.
once that happened in the fight and it turned out to be Guy, I was like, wait, like for a couple seconds, I was just like, wait a minute, he couldn't tell that was her the whole time. Like that threw me off. The aspect of the amount of DNA that they had in the serum, which I'm not sure what the serum was, but there was all kind of random characters in there. Really, Thanos? Where did they get DNA from Thanos from? How are you getting
Did
DNA
they have
from
Thanos DNA?
Yeah, Thanos was one of the characters. I looked. I went back and like 3 times. Went back and watched.
Oh, on the like the names that were populating on the thing.
Yeah,
Oh, I guess he bled too, right? They also chopped off his head on the other one, so they could have brought it.
well, that
They
was
could
the
have brought his
first
body
one, but
back.
maybe. But in the second one, remember, he ended up basically just dusting away.
Oh yeah, dusting away. Well, maybe they. I will say that they probably chopped off the one that they chopped off his head. They brought back and with them as proof that they killed Thanos, and and they got his blood from there.
And then like when I looked online after I watched, and there was a couple other characters that weren't at the Battle of for Earth. So it was one of those like how are they just putting these names in there just to put the names in? Was this an ongoing collection thing from like the Battle of New York that Fury started then? But I don't know. It just seemed like they were just trying to shove random characters in there just to put them in there. Ant-Man and the Wasp, he wasn't around. Like when? How did they get his DNA?
Captain America, Corvus Glaive, Thanos, an Outrider, Proxima, Midnight, Captain Marvel, Abomination. Yeah, Abomination wasn't there. Mantis, Call Obsidian, Drax, Korg, Ebony Maw, Frost Beast, Hulk, Black Panther, Chitari, Valkyrie, Thor Odinson, Gamora, Flora Colossus, and Winter Soldier were all explicitly mentioned on the
Explicitly.
screen. Ebony Maw's powers, which was the
And he wasn't there
using
'cause
like
he was
the
killed earlier in the movie, right?
yeah. Well, they got his blood from earlier in Infinity War, I guess too. Battle of Earth could technically probably be the whole 5 year period from Infinity War onto Endgame. Really. Or maybe that was just Fury saying that's where most of the blood was spilt, but they probably picked up some of it from other times. Like, if Abomination was actually included, which it was, I'm sure I don't know if he was helping out, but he was also in prison, so they could have just from She-Hulk, they could have just took his blood from there.
Yeah, he was locked up, so I get it. Like he doesn't really have a lot of choice on what they're gonna do to him in prison. So, like I said, some of it I get. Some of it I was just like, wait a minute, Thanos, you're pulling DNA from the Mad Titan here. Like, is that something we really want to do? Like,
And you know what? True. Another point is if Rhodey was a Skrull this whole time. Not to go back to this fully, but I just saw something that made me think of it. And he went to that Thanos planet with the garden to kill Thanos with him. He would just be able to see that, like, that's a perfectly habitable planet that nobody else is on for Skrulls, and they could have just moved there. So again, it doesn't really track. Whatever. I like, okay, let's talk President Ritson, because I'm curious on this part here, because the thing I found the most interesting almost about this whole show and about this whole episode was the end. Not to sound like I didn't like it, but I mean, what was very interesting, it sounded like if we could get a couple more episodes of this, I'd be very interested in, but Ritson does this whole talk on the news. He fits into this suit to make him look like he's better. Like the suit makes him look like more like he's not in not as in pain and stuff. Like he had trouble getting it on and stuff. But when he's sitting down, he looks great. And then he lets out this anti-alien speech that comes out of nowhere that starts causing people to go shoot public figures to see if they're Skrulls or not. And that is the paranoia I thought we were going to get with Secret Invasion, and that I thought was very interesting. And I think that is why I think Fury calls him a one-term president. This is why he's going to lose the election.
Yeah, Fury made that comment. That's very one-term review. It's very xenophobic of old Dermot Mulroney there. You're right. I would have loved to have seen if they would have done. So they went 6 episodes. If they would have done 8 or 9, let's say they would have done 9 episodes, and for the next 2, we could have had
the fallout,
the fallout from this, of what it's like in the world of who is a Skrull, who isn't a Skrull. What happens and everything, and maybe Fury has to go around and trying to clean this stuff up, and they have to go around with trying to clean this stuff up. In these other 3 episodes, you also could have had maybe a better explanation of the timeline with Martin Freeman's character and with Rhodey, to say how long they have been Skrulls, to maybe kind of sink that in more before eventually Fury realizes like he gets a call or he has to go back up to Saber. I listen to everything I'm going to say here before anybody makes a judgment. I can understand why the president would feel the way he did. So we go back to he's in the hospital. Okay. Rhodes gets the call that Fury's on the way, and they start taking out all the Skrull Secret Service agents, and they're trying to move them from place to place. President's in pain. He's confused about what's going on. Rhodes still isn't really giving him a ton of information. I don't understand why a colonel is yelling at an admiral who outranks him by several ranks, but that's beside the point. And then we finally get to where it's confronted. Fury relays everything to President Ritson and eventually shoots Rhodes and shows that he's a Skrull.
Yeah, do you think it took they were kind of bickering back and forth there for a bit? Like, why not just were they trying to not kill the fake Rhodey for some reason?
I think that was initially the plan.
Yeah.
And then once he grabbed the gun,
could even just shot him in the leg like Sonya, like Fallsworth did, right? Where she was able to prove to people that way. Yeah.
And the fact she got the drop on him because he didn't check behind the door.
Yeah, yeah.
I love her. She's so awesome. But yeah, and Fury relays to him that there's thousands of people, if not more, that are underground, that if you authorize a strike on Russia, you're going to kill them because this is how the Skrulls are taking their, are they're becoming these people. You know, eventually they shoot Rhodes. Ritson sees that he's an alien. And remember, he's got to try and piece everything together. He blacked out during his initial attack, right? And plus, he was hung upside down in his vehicle with the blood rushing to his head, so that's probably not great for the brain and other body parts and things. So, you know, he's still piecing everything together. It is 100% wrong for him to just be so xenophobic about it.
Right,
it's like,
right.
We know who you are, we're going to kill you. I think it can be understandable for him in that situation to want to react strongly. And honestly, if you're in a situation, what other choice do you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, one, you've been fooled this whole time, right? You don't know who's real or not at this point still, too. Of course, you have...
One of your closest advisors you found out has been a Skrull. I think eventually maybe it probably would have gotten relayed to him about what happened in Russia in the first episode, you know, with Gravik and the killing of Agent Hill was a Skrull operation. So he's trying to piece this together. Basically, these aliens have came and almost started World War III, right?
Yeah, to decimate the whole world, really, with mutually assured destruction.
In all fairness, there may not be any way there may not be any coming back from that between Russia and the United States. It's easy for us to look at it and be like, oh, it's a simple explanation. We didn't do this. It was an alien who did this. And the Russians like, oh, we didn't do this to you. It's an aliens who did this. Oh, man. Oh, that's messed up. And they shake hands and we become friends. But the fact of the matter is, relations are so strained between the two countries as it is. I don't know if they can come back from this. Like, this is going to put tensions even so much higher. Like, and I mean, it's happened many times in history before, but a nuclear strike almost happened, right?
Yeah. This was like Cuban Missile Crisis even more.
I mean, we were minutes away, if not seconds away from something being launched here. So once again, what not only because of everything that happened, but he can't stand, and he's got to have a strong reaction because this ultimately might be for the good of the entire planet. Because if he doesn't have that strong of a reaction, it makes the situation with Russia even worse because now it looks like we're taking the Skrulls' side. And the Skrulls are the ones who blew up whatever square it was and caused all this stuff. And then they find out they've been hiding and so there's so much else that goes on.
Oh my God, yeah, we get the Fox News guy gets shot down on set. And then
Yeah.
you know, Fury even says some of these people that were shot were not, you know, they were humans.
Innocent humans.
Yeah, and we see that with the
we
British.
we see someone, it looks like probably a member of parliament or someone in the British government just gets shot and killed right there, and she doesn't turn into a Skrull. Like,
has the red blood, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like a couple of episodes of that, or at least one episode of chaos like that around the world it would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, because you know we're just going to reset. You know, like the next movie or show is not even going to discuss this, I don't think. But Casey, is this the new excuse? Is this the new, like, is this something Bill Clinton would trot out here, you know, when he's saying he didn't have sexual relations with that woman? It's like, it was a Skrull. It wasn't me. It's the new Shaggy song. It wasn't me. It was a Skrull.
Hey, look, that could work for anybody. that could have been an issue for anybody. Like, you know, someone who might have been having an affair on their significant other. They came up to him
it was
and
a
was like,
Skrull.
"Oh, that wasn't me. That was a Skrull. I've been in a coma for 3 months. I got kidnapped 3 months ago. That was a Skrull." Hey, and then we could tie it into She-Hulk. So what happens, like, if some of these Skrulls are doing crimes and things
in the name?
you know?
Yeah, like season 2 of She-Hulk is it has an episode dedicated to well, this guy, robbed a bank with my face when he was a Skrull. There's some issues here.
So many things that
Yeah.
There's so many things they could tie this into. It'd be great.
I would love to see She-Hulk cover this with the comedy aspect, because I think it does have some good, as much as like the drama stakes at the end where they're like, assassinating all these people, the comedy stakes of like, honey, it wasn't me, it was a Skrull, and then like they disprove that, or so the divorce settlement is even bigger or something. There's ways to.
I
make
would
this
just
fun.
love. I still say She-Hulk season 2 would have been great just to focus on the law aspect of everything. To just look at legal aspects and do courtroom stuff, like a mini courtroom dramedy would have been awesome.
Oh boy. So do you think we ever get any follow-up here with this Fallsworth? She meets with Gaia and they propose a partnership that kind of like Fury and Talos had, but they said without being friends, right? We're going to use each other, so we're not getting in the friendship's not getting in the way.
Fallsworth was just like, yeah, I'm gonna use you, you're gonna use me. Like, let's just keep this for what it is, right? Which honestly, like, yeah, that's what those relationships are for. I hope we do. One, because as I said, I love the character of Agent Fallsworth. I would like to see more Gaia. I don't know. Obviously, they don't tell us. I don't know what kind of contract Emilia Clarke signed with Marvel. I know typically Marvel doesn't do a lot of one and done stuff.
Now they do. Actually, now they've been doing more of that than like when they first started. They started doing the whole like 10 film deals, and now they do less of that. So I'm curious too.
I know they cut down. I know they weren't doing like, I think Chris Evans said that was one of the reasons he turned down Captain America several times initially was, I think it was something ridiculous, like 7 movies or something they wanted him for. And it was always one of those, like, he can't really do, it's one of those, you have to plan your other shooting, any other projects you're around have to be planned around Marvel projects. And especially if they want to do reshoots, you have to be available. Like, they can just call up tomorrow and be like, hey, we need you in Finland in 3 weeks for reshoots for Captain America scuba gear, right? And so now you've got to be out there, in 3 weeks in Finland. So I know they cut down, but I didn't know they weren't doing like one and done stuff. I thought they were still doing like 2 or 3 project deals or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm just curious where we would even fit this in at this point because, one, we have a writer strike and an actor strike. But 2, Iger said they're going to start cutting back on some of this stuff because of, budgeting stuff and the stocks and all that.
What is the plot of Secret Wars?
So Secret Wars, funnily enough, has nothing to do with Secret Invasion. Secret Wars, there's been 3 events, I think, called this. So the original Secret Wars event was a cosmic entity called the Beyonder, has become fascinated with Earth's superheroes, and he creates a world called Battle World on a planet in a distant galaxy. And then he just teleports superheroes and supervillains there and say, pretty much fight. That was the first Secret Wars. Secret Wars 2, I don't really know. Secret Wars 3 is just called Secret Wars 2015. But that was more of like the universes colliding together in the multiverse, which is what they're going to do more in this show with the Multiverse Saga. And then like heroes and villains from other planets and other universes having to fight because whatever universe wins is the only universe that'll survive the
different versions of like Thor or Captain America and
yes,
whatever other villains. Okay. I obviously I could have looked that up. I don't know why I didn't.
So it'll be like,
lazy.
It's an opportunity for like Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield to come back if they wanted to, like, the different Spider-Man or whoever else they're
if they could find a way to get like Chris Evans back for a quick thing or
right. He doesn't even have to play
Robert Downey
his
Jr.
Cap, he could play a different Captain America so it doesn't mess up his storyline. So
Ooh, but it'll never happen. But one thing they could do, I would love to see if they could find a way to get Tom Cruise for the Tony Stark from Another World.
yeah, that's interesting.
Because
That
apparently, like he was, like they were trying to get him for. Apparently, they were trying to get him for Doctor Strange.
that was
to
the
make an
rumor.
appearance as-
Yeah,
and he, I guess he was doing one of his Mission Possibles, so it couldn't work. But
I think
That
the
would-
one that
I
just
mean-
came out is the one that he was working on because
well, they probably filmed them together back to back. So,
yeah.
but yeah, so I thought maybe Secret Wars was kind of like a continuation of this, and it makes sense in theory if you think about it. Like,
With the
okay,
name.
we had the Secret Invasion, right? And now we're having a war because we don't know who is and isn't a Skrull, and now we're trying to figure this out and hash it out. But apparently that's not the case. So that's why there are smarter people than me who write and make comic books and movies, and I'm just a dude on his couch doing a podcast.
Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of, it's like the Marvel word for Marvel's use of the word secret is kind of become what DC's version of the word crisis is, where everything was crisis. Crisis on Infinite Earths, Dark Crisis, Identity Crisis, all these crises that always, Final Crisis that happens in DC Comics are, Marvel with the Secret Wars 2, Secret Wars 2015, Secret Invasion. Like, they just love using the word secret, I guess.
But I do hope we get, like you said, I don't know where they could shoehorn it in. I don't know if maybe they do another series with these two. I don't know if they pull it into a movie. I think it might be better as a series, possibly. But I would like to see Fallsworth and Gaia and what happens from here, because there is more story to tell there.
Gaia has got to be the most powerful hero on Earth right now, right? I mean, she has every single power available to her. Like, that's, I hopefully she shows up again, or else she's just like a loose thread out there with like the most power in the world. She has Captain Marvel's powers, who's like the strongest Avenger. She's got Thor's, who's like number 2, Hulk, Drax, all the big boys. She has, everything except
Thanos.
Iron Man, really, right? Because Iron Man's is all tech, but that's insane.
So it's the DNA of him. So I'm assuming at some point he probably does have it. They didn't show it, but I'm sure it does have Tony Stark's DNA, which might give him some of the intelligence and how
true.
he makes his stuff, right? Wanda.
Oh yeah, she has the Scarlet
again-
Witch's powers. She's strong.
Like, so if it's all of these,
Now maybe they
Yeah,
don't
it's-
function at the full level because she has too many of them, but like she looked pretty darn strong in this.
well, it's gotta function at full level. She basically turned into Mantis.
That was
had the
cool,
two little
yeah.
things out, basically turned into Mantis and put Gravik to sleep. Like,
Now,
you
do you
know-
think she has to know what powers are in her, or does she like feel like, oh, because like the question would come to, how does she even know what Mantis's powers are? Does she just like have this feeling
That
of
was-
like,
on one of the websites I saw, it was like 10 or 12 things wrong with this episode. That was one of them, and there was so many. There was the DNA of whatever of so many people or so many beings that they got infused with. How do they know what these powers are and how to use them? And because it basically just got infused, I mean, unless you're, like you said, unless a feeling just comes up, like how did she just randomly know to like put 2 little antenna up and turn into Mantis and put him to sleep, right? Like, like these are things where I don't know. Once again, I know it's just done for the effect of the show, but
yeah. Well, then we also get Fury going up with his wife. This is kind of what I wanted, right? I said I wanted some sort of reconciliation between them, and we get an answer to the question that she posed to him a couple weeks ago.
Before that, remember they had the phone call before. So
Oh yeah.
was that even Fury who was on the phone with her? I'm guessing.
I think it
that might
was.
have
I
been
think it was
Fury.
before they put the full plan in action. Yeah, because she was with Gaia, right? Because they were with each other the previous episode. So.
Yeah, but remember, Guy had already split.
Oh
after-
yeah, she
well,
had.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well.
But yeah, so
Yeah, I think it's Fury.
They talked. Basically, he told her goodbye. Like basically, he was telling her at that point. But yeah, so he went back to the house. Basically, they decided to split up at the house. They decided, it was what it was, and it was gonna end. Yeah, and then they had the conversation. Or when did they have the conversation? Was that at the ship? I don't know.
Yeah, at the ship. Well, they have a
That
conversation
knocking on
at the
door
ship
messed me up.
here, and we get an answer to the question from a few weeks ago when she says, like, would you have ever loved me if I was just myself? And he said, I guess we'll never know. Well, now we do know, because she turns back into herself, and he says yes, and they both go up
She even
together.
goes back by her real name.
Yes. Yeah, not Priscilla as she was known, but her name is Vara. And then they also say that the Kree are having peace talks with the Skrulls, so that might be the answer too on like the whole. I don't know if I would trust the Kree after all they did, but I guess they might have a home after this still. The Skrulls now.
I'll be honest, I completely forgot about the Kree. I forgot about why the whole thing with the Kree and the Skrull started. It's been so long since I've seen Captain Marvel, like I kind of just forgot about that whole aspect and what happened between those two alien races.
Well, what's interesting too is in the comics, the Skrulls are more villains, and I think the Kree are, I don't know if they're good guys, but like they're more. It's like a little bit of a reversal with the show here and the movies in the MCU, but yeah, they are. It's interesting that they would have these peace talks with them, and I don't know if that wraps up anything to do with all of this. Like, I would hope that we still get Skrulls and Krees later on in the MCU, but just interesting that was such a throwaway line in the show too, of just like, hey, these the Skrull, oh, they have the Kree, they're going to be nice to us now. You're like, okay, that wrapped it up pretty quickly there. But yeah, so that is, they go up in space, and I don't know if we're seeing Vara in the Marvels or not, but she'll just be in Fury's cabin if not, I guess, right? Like if we don't see her, just think she's there. Anything else about this episode? I think we covered most of it, but
yeah, that's pretty much it. The fight was okay. I mean, it was what it was for. I hate to say it, it's your basic superhero fight between two people with superpowers.
The only thing that looked odd for me when we talk about the CGI and stuff is when she had Drax's arm. It just looked weird because she's not like the same size as Drax, so it just looked like a tiny Drax arm. Petite. But it is what it is. That's what Super Skrulls look like. They have the arm of the person that they're using or whatever. It's whatever.
I thought we were going to get more Gravik. I didn't think they were going to kill Gravik in this.
By the way, I went to the movies yesterday and saw a trailer for a Bob Marley movie, and Kingsley Ben-Adir, who plays Gravik, is playing Bob Marley.
Nice.
So he's going from this to Barbie to Bob Marley. He's gonna have
He's on a roll.
Yeah, I mean, he did stuff before this too, but I only really know him from this, I think. Let's see if I Google real quick. Sometimes his face looks familiar to me, and sometimes it doesn't. Oh, he's in like Peaky Blinders and the OA. I didn't watch any of those. No, I haven't seen him in anything then.
A lot of British stuff.
Yeah, some of the British stuff, which I do watch occasionally. Like I've seen Death in Paradise where he makes an appearance in one episode, but I don't think I've seen the episode he's in. Or World War Z, I didn't watch.
Wait, he was in the movie World War Z?
Yeah, as Officer Hawkins. I don't know who that is, but there you go. He hasn't been in
I've
like
seen
a lot.
World War Z, but it's been a while. You haven't seen that one, have you?
No, I have not. I'm not a Brad Pitt guy. Don't really care for Brad Pitt.
Movie number 2 on my list. You're not gonna like, man.
Is World War Z? That's the next one. You're like, I can't believe you haven't seen this.
No, it's World War Z is definitely going on there, but no, that's not number 2.
Oh, okay,
number
okay.
2 picked out as well, but it's a different one. Yeah, it's well, I mean, he's got a hot streak going, so let's hope.
Yeah.
He can,
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen some of the stuff that he's in like multiple episodes of. But yeah, I liked him as Gravik. I thought he brought some gravitas to the role. Actually, I think the show falls apart a little bit more if it was somebody different. Honestly, like if it wasn't as somebody like I thought he held a good presence in the show. That I'm not sure if everyone could replicate. So he was a highlight. But obviously MVP of the show and highlight of the show, Olivia Colman as Fallsworth. I mean, that was just incredible performance by her.
So what do you think of Emilia Clarke's character?
I liked her. I didn't think we had enough time with Gaia, actually. I thought she'd be in the show more, and a lot of times she was like silent, not talking. So I don't know.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like we talked about a couple episodes ago. She was, I mean, I know they made a big deal about signing, Emilia Clarke was signed on to play for this role and everything. And obviously she's a big name from Game of Thrones and Terminator. And like you said, she was there and she didn't do a bad job by any means. I'm not saying she was bad at the gig, but it's just, she wasn't. I thought she was going to have more to do or more to say. Or be a bigger part.
She was definitely in more of the latter half, but still not like overall as much as I thought she would be. One mark I would have against the show is I thought the first half of the show was a lot better than the second half. I thought when Talos died, we actually lost a bit of stuff because I really like his character and really like his actor. But again, like if I were doing this show, which, I'm not like a professional writer or anything, I would have had a lot more paranoia. I would have had a lot more like espionage stuff going on in here, where it felt like it was very basic A, B, like point A to point B for some of this stuff that I thought could have been a little more interesting. I liked I liked the directing in it. Actually, I liked a lot of the visual shots. I liked a lot of the fights that they would have and stuff. But ultimately, like I don't rank these things that much anymore. It would probably be for me middle of the pack for the Disney Plus shows. Maybe like it's not my favorite. It's not my least favorite, I don't think, and it's just it's there. I enjoyed my time with it. I don't know if I'm rushing to rewatch it anytime soon, but
yeah, it was. So I've seen 4. I've seen WandaVision, Loki, She-Hulk, and this one. Not that it was bad. Like you said, I did enjoy it. I don't regret spending the last 6 episodes watching it. But I would put it 4th out of the 4. Still good, still enjoyable. I don't think anything will top WandaVision for me, and that could just be the story they told and the connection to the characters I had, especially coming off of Endgame. She-Hulk, I thought was so underrated. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
The comedy was great, and I think there's so much more they could do with the character and the setting, and like I said, the legal aspects of it. I wasn't sure what to expect with Loki, and that really surprised me just because, like, I wasn't sure how you would build a show around that character, and they did some interesting things with it. And yeah, they could have done more in this show too, as far as the espionage, or like I said, even one or two more episodes of just chaos of even if they would have done one more, another 35-minute episode, 38-minute episode of just chaos after the president gave that speech and the aftermath of what happens now. Like, I know we got a little bit of it with, like, you know, the 30 seconds they showed during that phone call, but there's so much more that's going on. And how do we know, like, somebody wouldn't have tried to take a shot at the president thinking he's a Skrull? Like,
right.
You know, all these other things that could have happened. Not only that, but like I said, the aftermath with these people coming back from having been held captive with the Skrulls. What happens with them? Also, why were Falsworth and Gaia surprised in the end when they showed all those other humans attached to whatever Skrull technology that was there?
Yeah, so I think that's
Like,
supposed to be like, I don't know, I guess, because that's like the main hub of them, right? That's not like the ones that were all joining Gravik. So, because we know there's 1 million, right? So is that like the 1 million that he was talking about on the train ride with Fury, of like, hey, there's like 1 million of us? It did look like a lot. It looked like a lot of people strapped in there. But yeah, I was kind of like, is this supposed to be a reveal? I didn't really understand what they were trying to say with it, but...
So 2 questions. One, why were they surprised when they knew what the Skrulls were doing in the first place with the other humans? So, like, they knew they had them in these different things and strapped in and blah, blah, blah.
I don't know.
So seeing that again shouldn't be surprising. 2,
especially not for Gaia, who is a Skrull.
So 2, does that mean every Skrull, there's approximately 1 million Skrulls out there, right? That are living among us. So does that mean every Skrull that is a human, that is living as a human right now, they had to kidnap and take that human out of their life, put them someplace else, and then take that human spot? Is that what they're saying?
Well, I like that better than the other alternative, which is where they just kill them, because they were supposed to be like a peaceful people in this universe. So to me, it makes sense that they would have put them somewhere. Yeah.
So there's no way that they can assume someone's identity or the identity of a person without physically taking it. So they can't like look at you, like as they're walking down the street, look at you, and then all of a sudden a block later they're another version of you, and you're going on your way, they're going on their way, and now there's 2 Jordan Wiegans roaming around.
They can, but the issue becomes, if you're going to take over the person's life, you have to have their memories, and to have their memories, they have to have that machine where they can look into their memories, which is what Gaia does at one point too, to get the password for the sub nuclear thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have their memories. So, like, if they're going to actually take over their life and to make sure that the person's not going to walk in on them and stuff, then they would need to hide them away somewhere. They can just use them the way that, like, Gravik just used Fury while Fury was there without capturing him, but he didn't have any of Fury's, like, memories at that point. So he wouldn't be able to, like, keep up the illusion, I guess, if people were going to question him about it. Interesting, too, that Gravik's appearance is of the person he first killed on Fury's orders.
So this might change some people's thoughts, because basically that means, if the right information comes out, there's 1 million Skrulls that have came down, okay? They have taken 1 million people, kidnapped them, hid them away for who knows how long, and are now living like... Some people could look at that and say the president might be more right than...
Oh, absolutely. There will be people that think that for sure.
especially if the right information comes out about the only way for this to happen is for them to physically take and kidnap this person, and now they have him strapped somewhere else. Like, that changes the math on everything as compared to there's an alien species living among us or whatever. That's one thing. It's another thing when it comes out that this alien species is taking people and putting them away and living their lives. Like, that changes the math, and that may get a whole lot more people on President Ritson's side.
Right.
Because honestly, I hadn't thought of that. I had not thought that for that million people that Talos said, that means there's a million humans that they had to kidnap and take and put away. That's scary.
I know people won't agree with me on this, I don't think, but I would love just a whole show dedicated to the politics of the MCU. I would love to just like watch like the West Wing in MCU, you know, like what they're dealing with, all of the stuff that always happens. What did the regular people think about? I find that stuff real fascinating because we have conspiracies in our world, Casey, where there's not shapeshifters, right? I mean, some people do think what people are lizard people and shapeshift and all that weird stuff. Some people think that already, but once it's proven to you in a show like the MCU, like once, if you were living in that world and it's proven to you, how do you continue to live? We talked about how do you continue to live in New York? How do you continue to live on this planet when the person next to you could be a Skrull?
The Chitauri could come back at any point. Yeah.
Yeah, or the person next to you that you're married to could be fake. It's interesting. I really curious. I would love to just see. Did you ever watch the show Powerless on NBC? It was a office comedy starring Vanessa Hudgens and Alan Tudyk and other people. But it was taking place in the DC universe where they'd have, superheroes are real. And it was like they were a branch of Wayne Enterprises and stuff. It was a funny comedy. It lasted one season. It got canceled. I really enjoyed it, though. But something like that, but like dramatic, is what I want in the MCU. Just like something totally like show me all the turmoil that these people are going through in the real world. I would love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, that changes a lot of things and how people would look at it. And then how do you even know who to trust? Like, you would go crazy in that world, I think, at this point. You're like, who do I trust? What do I do? You try to, like, harmlessly give your spouse a paper cut to know if they have purple blood or not, I guess. There's ways to go about it without shooting people on sight the way that the people were reacting in the show. But you could do, like, how some people have those rituals where they like take a knife and they like cut their palms together and they like have they'll have their blood. Like, you guys just both do that as like let's see if we're both Skrulls or not. Let's prove our love to each other that way. Okay, here's one I just thought of. Your dude, your significant other gets snapped out of existence, right? Mm-hmm. 5 years later, they come back from the blip. Maybe you've moved on, maybe you haven't. You've got enough turmoil with that, right? Let's say you have moved on. You've moved on, and it sucks, but you moved on to someone else, another significant other. Now, a couple years later, you find out your next significant other isn't your actual significant other because it was kidnapped by a Skrull, and your other significant other is a Skrull.
The second one, the one I moved on to?
Statistically, that's happened to at least one person in this universe.
Yeah, that's a conundrum. Like, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, how do you even continue with your life in the MCU? And then you just know at any moment, like, Secret Wars is going to happen and our universe is going to collide with another universe and the superheroes are going to have to save you again. You're like, why does this keep happening to us?
Look, you could be a dude in New York City, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who all that happened to, who might have actually even lost a first girlfriend or significant other in the Battle of New York.
That's true. Yeah.
Statistically, that's happened to at least one person in this universe.
It's like Bad Luck Brian. He's just got like all the bad luck. Everything happens to him. Yeah, that's a
one person in that universe
conundrum.
has had it rough.
That is a conundrum. All right, we'll wrap it up here. But Casey, you'll be back for Loki season 2.
I shall return.
Casey will be back for Loki season 2.
Speaking of which, I think they put the first poster out for it.
Yeah, the trailer is rumored to be dropping on Monday, actually. Yeah, so the trailer is supposed to drop on Monday, rumor is. Yeah, I don't know how much of a trailer it'll be. Like, I don't know how much they want to try to give away here before it premieres in about 2 months. But yeah, so that is what is coming up next on this channel. I'm assuming I'll also have some other stuff to fill time in the meantime. Around sometime in September, Casey and I will be dropping our new podcast where we talk about films for the first time. It's called Films for the Very First Time. You can catch us there. I'll probably put the first episode on this feed and then people can follow us from there. But Casey, you want to tell them the first one that we're watching then, so that way people can prepare for next month or 2 months from now.
Alrighty. So, how long have we been doing podcasts together? It's been what, like 6 years or something like that? 'Cause I was still at Walmart.
It was before I was married too. Yeah, I think we started in 2017.
So it's been about
early 2018, something like that.
So in that time, we've gotten to know each other fairly well. And every now and then, these little things would drop about movies that one of us has seen and the other one hadn't, and it kind of would surprise one of us. Like, oh, you really haven't seen this, or you haven't seen that, or I haven't watched this show. Really? I figured you would like it. So we thought, wow, well, we know each other fairly well, and that might make a good podcast to talk about stuff where one of us has seen a movie, the other one hasn't, and then the other one gets to experience that movie for the very first time. So we had a coin flip earlier. I won. So my first choice is a cult classic from Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I've actually never seen any Tarantino film. So
okay, so
this will be my first experience.
Before we watch it, let's give you and everyone else who might be listening to this a heads up.
Also, by the way, good crossover. This has Samuel L. Jackson in it.
Yes. I think he received an Oscar nomination for this one. I think Travolta did as well. But okay. Quentin Tarantino movies are not for everybody, right? I get that. They are hot. They are ultra violent. There's a lot of coarse language. There is gratuitous use of the N-word in most of his movies. I'm not offended by that in the course of the movie, simply because it fits in that movie. Like, it fits in these worlds that I've seen. It's not just to me it's not just using it just to use it. And he has a foot fetish, so he puts feet in all of his movies. So, we'll just put that out there. After you might watch a couple and be like, that might be a question that comes across. He shows a lot of feet, not a lot, but he shows.
That's one of the first things I've heard about this guy, by the way. Like, that's one of the only things I know. But
so a Quentin Tarantino movie might not be for everybody, right? And I get that. You might be turned off by it, but he is an auteur. he does make the movies he wants to make. He could not make an MCU movie. He could not make most typical movies. He makes the movies that he wants to make, that he wants to write, and various other things. I think he also wrote True Romance. He's done a lot of good movies. True Romance, Reservoir Dogs. He was involved in Four Rooms. So he's definitely quirky, and he uses a lot of the same actors in a lot of his movies. Tim Roth, Samuel L. Jackson, Harvey Keitel's been in a few, stuff like that. So, hopefully you guys enjoy it. It is definitely a viewing experience.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But we'll be recording it next week. But these episodes will start dropping in September. So you have a little bit of time if you want to watch Pulp Fiction. It's going to be on HBO Max, or Max as it's now known, or you can also probably rent it on Amazon or something.
HBO is just fine. Why did they it's been known as HBO for like 50 years. Why would you do that?
Well, it's a different, I guess, I don't know. It's, the channel still exists of HBO. It's just the streaming service, now called Max. But yeah, so you can follow us over there when that happens. Like I said, I'll put the first one up on here. I'll put the explicit tag on it too, because we're probably it's about Pulp Fiction. So I'm assuming that'll be, maybe some coarse language. So if you don't want to listen to that one, you can skip it on our feed here. But
we can try. We can talk about the movie without using the language.
True.
I mean, it's a possibility. It's a possibility it might be. But we'll see.
Also coming up here, I had just released on Elseworlds, our DC fan podcast. I released the 15th anniversary retrospective on The Dark Knight. With my co-host there, Chris. We recorded about a 50-minute conversation about The Dark Knight, the legacy it left behind, my thoughts on the movie, which are not as popular as other people's thoughts on the movie, and then so you can listen to that on there too. And this upcoming week, we're going to be dropping an episode where we've been doing these draft series where we draft the superheroes, supervillains. We're going to be drafting like superhero movies and like legacy they've left behind, influential superhero movies, stuff like that. So that'll be coming
89.
too. Batman 89 is very I already know which one I'm going to pick if it's there when I'm there, but I'm not going to say it yet because I don't know who's listening.
Yeah. No spoiler.
But yeah, so
or we can go Batman from the 60s.
Oh, true. Yeah, that is
the Batman movie from the 60s.
Influential movie. So I'm doing that. I'm gearing up for Ahsoka, the Disney Plus series over on The Pod Awakens, my Star Wars podcast. Gonna have already locked down a guest for that, so we're good there. That's cool. But yeah, so you can catch me at all those places too. But thank you all for watching and listening. We will catch you next time with Loki, I guess, or if anything happens in between there, big news stuff, I'll drop in and do an episode. But with the strikes going on, I don't think we're gonna get much news at all. So this is
it
us.
Doesn't look like these strikes are ending anytime soon either.
No, sadly, it does not. Sony just started moving. This is Marvel related. Sony just started moving back some of their Spider-Man films, like Across the Spider-Verse. Well, Beyond the Spider-Verse, the sequel to Across the Spider-Verse, is no longer on the calendar for early 2024. They pushed Kraven, which was supposed to come out in October, to like next August. Some of this stuff is really starting to get pushed. So to me, that makes me think the studios think that this is going to last quite a bit. So who knows? But if anything big happens, I'll be here to drop in and do an episode. But thank you all for watching and listening. We will catch you next time. Have a great rest of your week.